more than believing the right things, right? I've heard people say or refer to believing something about God, and thus they come to the conclusion that they must be Christian. They believe God is real, or they'll say, well, I believe in Jesus, as if that's enough. And they might be a Christian, but being a Christian is also about becoming like Jesus, about becoming who God wants us to be. The Christian life, the Christian faith, is a life of change for your entire life, however long that might be. And I know, because it's true for me and it's true for you, change is difficult. It always is. Particularly as we might get to a place where we're kind of settled and we're like, don't change me anymore. God, it was enough hard work as it is. But the Christian faith is about being transformed from who we are into who God wants us to be. And I suspect we would all agree we're not perfectly like Christ yet. The Christian faith is about following Jesus, trusting Him along that rocky road, as it often seems. It's not easy. I don't think anyone, maybe when we were younger, I don't know, and naively thinking we had the Christian life figured out, but I don't think anybody would go, this is easy. It's always easier just to be who we are, right? If I could just stay who I am, that would be far easier. To live life the way I want to, even instinctively. Wouldn't that be okay if it's just okay to do and say whatever comes first to mind? Because sometimes I do, and it rarely turns out. And that's why you might hear someone say, that's just who I am, justifying how they've acted. Or, I just say it the way it is, thinking they have the right to say whatever they want. Perhaps you've also heard Romans chapter 12, verse 2. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed. Change by the renewing of your mind. This verse is in contrast to the idea that we can be whoever we want to be, or say whatever we want to say, or even accept however we think we were born. Rather, it exhorts us to be transformed. Each one of us, everyone, to change. Romans 12 there, it said to not be like the people of this world, meaning that who might remain who they are, and rather become who Jesus wants us to be. Pastor Clayton referenced that verse in James about looking into the mirror, and that mirrors the Scriptures we look into, and it reflects back to us often those imperfections, to say it kindly. And why do we not want to be like the other people of this world, as the verse said? What's wrong with this world? Last week at one of my basketball practices, I exhorted one of my players to not do one thing which he did and to do another. And you know what his response was? Well, everyone else is doing it. And I said to him, why do you want to be like everybody else? Change. Be the better player, and maybe even the same for us. Why do we want to be like everyone else rather than become who God wants us to be, who wants you to be? Among other ways we could describe the Bible is a history book of sorts, which gives explanation of why the world is the way it is in many ways. And Romans 5:12 helps us here. It says, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way death came to all people because all sinned. Sin entered the world and destroyed what God had created. It's not the way it's intended to be. He created a world in which He could be in relationship with His creation, with us, and that's been broken. There's a divide. And we too were broken, filled with imperfection and natural tendency to sin. But we were created to be like Him. That's the intent. That's His desire. And with Him in relationship, but that's been broken as well and needs to be fixed. And praise God, there's a way. There is hope. The Apostle Paul, he wrote in Ephesians chapter 4, so I tell you this, he wrote the Ephesian people, and it relates to us today. And he insists on it in the Lord, he said, so he's pretty emphatic. No longer live as the Gentiles do, the people of this world, separated from God, in the futility of their thinking. Remember, we already referenced the transforming of our minds. And he gives some explanation of what that means or looks like. So they're darkened in their understanding, separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that's in them. See, there is something in us broken that's due to the hardening of their hearts. Having lost all sensitivity, have you noticed how sometimes you just don't care about things? We lost our sensitivity. Given themselves over to sensuality, whatever I feel, so as to indulge in every kind of impurity. And they're fully greed. It explains the separation from how we might live today to how we could live. There's also this darkening and an insensitivity and selfishness or greed. Paul continued in that passage to explain then how we could live. He goes, that, however, is not the way of life you've learned. Or we might say we're learning. When we've heard about Christ and we're taught in Him in accordance with the truth that's in Jesus. You were taught with regard to your former way of life, because we've been changing, right? To put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, and be made new in the attitude of your minds. And to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, each of you must. And he goes on then, therefore each of you must. He goes on to give explanation of what living as a Christian looks like. To take off some ways of living and put on other ones. Change the clothes every once in a while, right? To learn about life, there is a teaching necessary. There is discipleship. Sit under regular Bible teaching. Do your own Bible learning, studying at home. And then do that. Even when it feels unnatural. To take off some of those ways and put on others. To learn about life and to learn about Jesus. And note that it's not just a list of don'ts, right? But rather it's an invitation of how to live and who to be. There was a TV show, I don't know if it's in Canada or not, but it was in the States called What Would You Do? One of these hidden camera shows. And the hidden cameras, and there was a host who would observe and comment how these ordinary people would react in staged situations. They'd have people in the mall or restaurants or in whatever place and do these pretty controversial type things to see how the average person would respond. Would they take action and speak up, or would they remain quiet and, quote unquote, mind their own business? I've seen the show a time or two, but it causes me to think, what would I do in that situation? And when I'm at a distance, watching the show, I go, I'd speak up. I'd do something. I'd, do the right thing. But then you think about the situations where I have responded, and I'm like, I'm not quite as sharp as I think I am. When I have time to think about things, consider my options, maybe talk to some people, get some advice, that's when I make my best decisions. But it's in the instinct. It's in those split-second decisions that reveal my natural thoughts and the true condition of my heart. All too often I realize I still have so much further to change. We're continuing our series through the book of Judges. And we're going to continue with Jephthah, who Pastor Clayton introduced to us last week. And he was confronted in a situation and he had to make a decision. So we're going to turn to Judges chapter 11 and just read to start here verses 11 and 12. See if I can find this here. There we go. Judges chapter 11 verses 11 and 12. So it says, the elders of Gilead replied, the Lord is our witness, we will certainly do as you say. So Jephthah went to the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head. Am I reading the right chapter that I want to? Yeah, I think so. It's all right. Wasn't familiar for a second. So Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and commander over them, and he repeated all his words before the Lord in Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the Ammonite king with a question. What do you have against me that you've attacked my country? The king of the Ammonites answered Jephthah's messengers. When Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from the Arnon to the Jabbok. all the way to the Jordan. Now give it back peaceably. I've been in similar situations like this when I've been challenged. See, Jephthah's been challenged. And I've been challenged in similar like way. Have you ever had someone come to you and go, you did this or you said this, and you feel accused? You've done something wrong, so they think. And historically, my knee-jerk reaction is to admit it and apologize. I avoid conflict, my natural tendency. So I just go, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't think that. I didn't have that intent, and I'm sorry, will you forgive me? That's my knee-jerk reaction. And I don't know about you, but my natural response is to accept the blame. Because I think that will save the relationship. I think that will prevent further conflict. And this might be the right response in certain situations, like if I truly was wrong, if I was at fault. But I found myself over my tenure of life, I'll take the blame even if it's not mine. I want to keep things smooth. I don't know if you're like that. Then after the fact, as you can imagine, I'm left to wonder, why did I do this? Why did I accept the blame? Well, why do I take the burden upon myself if it truly wasn't my fault? And it's not to be a martyr by any means. It's to protect myself from further conflict. I hate it, and maybe you do too. For Jephthah, if he just accepted the blame, he could move on and hopefully repair any damage to the relationship, but he wisely did not. He would not have been true to himself or to his accuser if he would just bow down to the accusation. Okay, we have to note there's no honor in denying truth. But we'll also see, we'll take a look further, that Jephthah didn't attack back. He didn't retreat, but he didn't attack either. Well, yet. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 21 and 22, it describes when Jesus was under verbal attack. Jesus was under attack in his life, as you can imagine. He had been arrested, verbally abused, physically abused, and eventually ridiculed and mocked, hanging on the cross. I would lose my mind. I know it. But Peter wrote, "To this we were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you He left us an example. So what did Jesus do as our example? That we should follow his footsteps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth." It doesn't say he didn't speak, but he honored the truth. Jesus just showed this remarkable restraint. He didn't retreat, and I don't think he attacked either. He controlled his tongue, and he honored truth. While my ability is far, far less, maybe yours too, yet Jesus remains my example for how to respond. So some examples that happen all too frequent these days. When you read someone who posts something foolish online, how do you want to respond? Some of us younger ones in particular, you're on Facebook, and I don't know what, people lose their minds on Facebook. Their names are out there, don't they know that? And they say stupid stuff, and I so badly want to correct them, but I don't. Usually. I don't know how you respond. Or maybe a coworker, they confront you about something they think you did. How do you respond? Or maybe just this last Christmas. You know when you spend time with extended family? Like 2 days is max, right? And maybe you went beyond the 2 days, and that crazy aunt keeps saying, or crazy uncle, not to be gender specific, they keep saying stuff, and by day 3, you can take it no longer. Right? I don't know if you have those types of situations. Now, some of you are thinking, I just walk away. I don't say anything, believing that's the higher road. And that might sometimes be the proper response. Romans 12:18 tells us, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So to keep the peace might mean walking away sometimes. But there are also times that speaking is the proper response. We're going to read the rest of the chapter in Judges 11. We're going to look at, let's see here, verses 13 to 29. A bit of a sizable, but it'll help us out here. Okay, 14. Jephthah sent back messengers to the Ammonite king, saying, "This is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. That was the accusation. You took our land. But when they came up out of Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and to the Kadesh. So he's given a historical recollection of what actually happened, okay? When they came out of Egypt, Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea and to the Kadesh. Then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, "Give us permission to go through your country." But the king of Edom would not listen. So they sent also to the king of Moab, and he refused. So Israel stayed at Kadesh. Next they traveled through the wilderness, skirted the lands of Edom and Moab, passed along the eastern side of the country of Moab, and they camped at the other side of the Arnon. They did not enter the territory of Moab, and the Arnon, for the Arnon was its border. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites who ruled in Heshbon, and said to him, "Let us pass through your country to our place." Sihon, however, did not trust Israel to pass through its territory. He mustered all his troops and encamped at Jahaz and fought with Israel. Then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and his whole army into Israel's hands, and they defeated him. Israel took over all the land of the Amorites who lived in that country, capturing all of it from the Arnon to the Jabbok and from the desert to the Jordan. Now, since the Lord, the God of Israel, has driven the Amorites out before his people Israel, what right have you to take it over? Will you not take what your God Chemosh gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. Are you any better than Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever quarrel with Israel or fight with them? For 300 years, Israel occupied Heshbon, Aor or something, the surrounding settlements and all the towns along the Arnon. Why didn't you retake them? Why didn't you retake them during that time? I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and Ammonites. The king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message Jephthah sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jephthah. He crossed the Gilead and Manasseh, passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he advanced against the Ammonites. Now, if you're like me at all, I read through things like that, and I have no bearing. Like I don't know the country, so all those towns and peoples confuse me. So I don't know if you're like that. So, but hopefully we can bring some sense to it all. The accusation is that Israel took land that was not theirs. And if someone accuses you or someone takes what's not yours, what do? You get it back, right? You fight. You fight for what's right. You don't allow yourself to be pushed around. Or should you? Jephthah didn't fight, but he also didn't roll over. See, Jephthah found this perfect middle ground, if you will. Now, the dialogue is between messengers. It said Jephthah sent a messenger, not Facebook Messenger, but the messenger of the day. And Jephthah sent these messengers to the Ammonite king, stating the fact that Israel did not do what they said. They did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Ammonites. And he gave this historical rundown of the facts. And you could read again later, and hopefully you can start to make sense of it all. A number of years ago, Pastor Dwayne and I actually went to a seminar in Spruce Grove called Making Peace. I was in a course called Arrow Leadership years ago, and the presenter was in this course, and I really respected him. So Wayne and I went to this seminar called Making Peace, and ever since that, I own the material. The church owns the material, and I've wanted to host it here, and it's just never worked out. But because of it, it's just so impactful, and so hopefully now that I've said it, I'll host it sometime. The one story the presenter shared has just stuck in my mind ever since. It's a simple story, but a true one, and I'll tell it to you. The presenter was a pastor at one time, and a woman in his church asked to meet with him, phoned him, and they sat down to meet, and she was hurt by him. Apparently one day she was walking through the church parking lot, and she saw him drive away, and she said, "Hey, pastor!" And you know what he did? Completely ignored her. And she was hurt. She's like, how dare you just ignore me? And so she was upset about this, and so she called him. And perhaps the knee-jerk reaction for a good pastor would be to admit it, to say, I was probably just busy, I had something on my mind, and I just ignored you, and then solve it, right? How easy would that have been? But the pastor never did that. Instead, he asked for further details. When did this happen? What was I driving? What was I wearing? I don't know. He tried to understand the whole situation and the encounter and the day it happened on. And he looked in his calendar. He's a detailed guy, and he kept track of his days and stuff. And do you know what he discovered? And thus the woman as well. He wasn't even in the country the day. He was traveling. He was away. She had seen someone who looked like him. The seminar shared 2 different perspectives with 4 different ways people can respond to accusations or confrontation. There's a left-handed, more subjective feelings perspective, or the right-handed, objective facts perspective. Already you might see yourself on a certain side, generally, feelings or facts, right? With the left-handed perspective, one can be either then passive or evasive. And maybe you're like that. The people who are passive, who use passive responses, tend to believe that all conflict is wrong and must be endured quietly. Passive responders tend to believe that mercy and love forbid any confrontation. So they'll go to great lengths to deny feelings of anger. They'll call themselves being sinful if they're upset. And they'll avoid speaking the truth. People who are evasive, who use evasive responses, tend to believe all conflict is wrong and must be avoided. Evasive responders are reluctant to admit there's conflict. And when unavoidable, they'll rationalize, compromise, and blame others for the conflict. I don't know if you're left-handed like that. With right-handed perspective, one can be either defensive or aggressive. People who use defensive responses tend to believe all conflict is about proving who's right or wrong. So authority and position must be defended at any cost. People tend to use defensive responses when they're more interested in protecting their version of events than they are in finding God's truth or in restoring broken relationships. People who use aggressive responses tend to believe all conflict is about power. So it's an opportunity to see who's the strongest or who's in control. People tend to use aggressive or attack responses when they're more interested in protecting self, enforcing truth, rather than preserving a relationship. So already, I suspect, you've thought of situations in which you've been evasive or passive or defensive or aggressive. You've probably used all, depending on situations. I know I have. I have my natural go-tos. But there is a third perspective, thankfully. There's left-handed, right-handed, and ambidextrous, right? It's the posture of peace. Embodying the peace of Christ in our words and our actions. Not being afraid of being both left and right-handed, but filled with truth and with love. Jephthah did not avoid giving an accurate rundown of the facts, right? He checked his day timer. He looked back in the records. He recorded exactly, this is from my perspective how things worked out. When Israel came out of Egypt, they never crossed Ammonite land. It did not happen, which he carefully recounted. But Jephthah did not stop there. He also addressed the issue theologically with them. Now, there's a debate by some commentators regarding what Jephthah said, some thinking his theological understanding of God was limited and that he had this understanding that his God was one of many gods. Because he referenced the God of Chemosh, if that's the right name. But there's another position, one which I favor, in which Jephthah accommodated himself to the Ammonite worldview. Because as we know, even in our world, other nations, other faiths acknowledge other gods, which from the scriptures say they're not real. There's one God. But Jephthah accommodated their understanding that their nation had a God. That each nation's God gives that nation a portion of the land. Remember, Jephthah, what he said was, well, if your God Chemosh gave you that land and our God gave us this land, this is the way it must have to be. Even though Jephthah knew the Lord is the only God and rules all nations. And lastly, Jephthah referred to the legal precedents. No one had previously challenged Israel's right to the land. If you recall, when I read the scriptures, he said, no one's brought this up in all these years. Why are you bringing it up now? Right? He said there was no legal precedence then. Why do you think there's legal precedence now? Jephthah had no desire to fight, but he honored the truth. In verse 27, Jephthah said, though, I've not wronged you. Right? He was just being honest to the truth here, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. He wasn't afraid also to point out the truth, that although you think I've done wrong, you have done wrong. And then he says, let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Ammonites. And it says, the king of Ammon paid no attention to the message Jephthah sent him. Basically, he was speechless, but also had no interest in peace. See, sometimes if you've ever been confronted, people aren't looking for peace. They're looking for a fight, right? And that's a no-win situation. Romans said, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And sometimes we have that ability, right? We can contribute to peace, but sometimes when the other side comes with spears and swords, you realize that I can do nothing about this because they're looking for a fight. Sometimes peace is not possible. You can only do what you can do lovingly and truthfully, but the other side also has to make their decision. And then Jephthah said, then it's up to God to work it out. And that is a tough place to be. But remember, I mentioned being a Christian is about following and trusting Jesus. Sometimes we truly have to leave a situation in God's hands because we've done all we can do. So with these two perspectives, different perspectives in mind, how do you respond to accusation or conflict? Interestingly, we were at a basketball tournament yesterday, and we went out for lunch, and the players sat at one table, and the teacher rep and my bus driver sat at another table, and it came up, the topic of conflict. And one of them said to me, I hate conflict. And in my mind, I'm like, me too. But I tried to make it seem like I had a firm hold on it because I had this passage in mind. And so I sounded like an expert. But, we talked about it. But generally, people will say they don't like conflict. And those who say they do, look out, because they're probably the aggressive ones. So these two different perspectives, the feelings, emotional, believing you're taking the higher road, or the factual truth, looking for a fight side. What do you most like, the left-sided, passive, or evasive? And if you can't decide, don't worry, neither are the best option, right? Or you're on the right side and always up for a good fight, stating the facts, looking for the win. Defensive or aggressive, maybe both. However you respond, there are some principles, thankfully, that can guide us. James chapter 1, verse 19 instructs us. And notice that it's not a suggestion. The scriptures are not a suggestion, like, hey, try this as an option. It's do this in following Jesus. So, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen. You want to be fast at something? Be fast listeners. Slow to speak, slow to become angry. Oh, Lord, have mercy on me, right? This is a difficult response because I've been working at it for years, and it just does not come natural. Listen to the person bringing their concern to you. And what's difficult is if you can see them coming from the horizon, and you can have all your time to work yourself up, right? But I need to remember, whatever they're saying are only words. So we need to listen to them, seek to understand them, hear them, and resist. I don't know which one in the relationship does this, but resist thinking about your response while they're still speaking. Ever done that? I hate it when the person said something substantial in their first sentence because I want to respond to that before they get done their whole paragraph, right? Choose not to be defensive or aggressive, and don't want to be passive or evasive. Well, you might want to be, but Jesus does not want you to be passive or evasive. Instead, our heart's desire should be I just want to be like Jesus. How would Jesus respond to an accusation like this? Follow his example. And in addition to listening, choose to love. Love the person who comes to you. And there must be one thing about this person, even if it's your cranky coworker, and think that, they're good at leaving work on time or something. There must be something good about them. By willingly listening to them and honoring what they have to say. 'Cause often accusation comes out of pain, right? Somehow they feel hurt. And they might think you did it, and you might have, or you might just be the easy target. And so love them because you know they're feeling pain of some sort. They might be like the woman who got her facts wrong, whose pastor didn't wave back to her, or they might have a legitimate concern. So then we have to be willing to know our own errors. And isn't that uncomfortable? When I found out I wasn't perfect, that was heartbreaking. Be ready and willing to confess anything you have done wrong. But don't knee-jerk react. Oh, I'm sorry. Seek to understand. Seek to understand, your own shortcomings. So maybe you won't do it again, but maybe it's not as bad as they thought. As all conflicts are, it takes two to tango, don't they say? You're not the worst one in the relationship. The two of you caused the conflict, right? That's how we are. We're both broken. Resist confessing for anything that isn't true. Do not avoid conflict, just avoid conflict. And have this hope then, as you are listening, hope the other person will listen to you. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Two people willing to listen to one another. And something to remember then is being reconciled is better than being right. So I'm told. I love being right. It's good. I've found that if someone is more often, so if you're identifying yourself as a passive evasive person, and you're like, I'm not going to do that anymore. Have you noticed how that works? The passive evasive people often swing to being defensive and aggressive. They swing too far. And the aggressive defensive people, I don't want to be like that. And they swing to being passive evasive. We need to get that pendulum to find and settle in the middle. Ephesians 4:15 is our guide for these potentially difficult conversations. It says, speak the truth in love. See, it doesn't say just speak the truth. Here are the facts. Here's what you did wrong. Here's what I did right. And it doesn't say just to be this wet puddle of love too, right? It says speak the truth in love. Truth and love and truth, mixed and blended together. And listen to what will happen. It said, if you do this, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of Him who's the head. That's Christ. Because we'll become like Him. We'll become mature. That's the end goal, to become more like Jesus. But why? Why would we be willing to change and become more like Jesus? Because it's so easy just to stay the same the way we are. Romans 2 helps us again. The entire passage, I read a little bit from that already, but it says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies, offer yourself as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. One reason to change is so that you'll become holy and pleasing to God. You'll honor Him because you want to become more like Him. Your life will increasingly become this true act of worship. And secondly, you'll discover what God's will is for your life. Who doesn't want to know that? You'll no longer be wandering through the circumstances of life, but discover God's good and pleasing, perfect will. Ambidextrous, if you will. I suspect each of you want that. Would you like to increasingly know God's good, pleasing, and perfect will for you? But see, the challenge is it's going to hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be awkward. See, I've found all too often that maturity hurts. Immaturity is just way more comfortable, but just embarrassing most of the time. But it just might bring the reality that we all desire. Our service will end shortly, but you'll have this gift of time of the afternoon. And perhaps during this afternoon, you'll think further about how you naturally respond. Some of you are probably going to get an opportunity this afternoon with some conflict, and you'll just see, whoa, I didn't want to learn this so quickly. But you'll have an opportunity to think about and then decide early ahead of the game of how do I want to respond next time when I face accusation or confrontation. I don't want to be left-handed. I don't want to be right-handed. I want to be ambidextrous. I want to speak the truth in love. We're going to transition to communion. And as we do this, there's an opportunity for us to ask the Lord to expose in us why we're left-handed or right-handed. What is it in us that we're scared of? And see, both those who are overly forgiving or overly domineering are both scared of something. See, we protect ourselves by fighting or fleeing, right? Don't we all do that? We're scared of being exposed for who we are, but as we come to the table in communion, we need to allow Christ to see us for who we truly are. No more hiding. Lord, expose in me so I can become more like you. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow his steps. He committed no sin, no deceit was found on his mouth. Might we take steps towards truth and love this morning? Let me invite those who help serve communion to come forward.